David. Everyone, please.
Quando foi isso aqui, ó? 5 de outubro de 2004. 2008, 4 anos atrás.
Alright guys, our second talk of the afternoon, we're going to talk about materials, bilingual materials, connecting the classroom to the world with teacher Chris Meany. But before that, I'd like to give you guys some announcements. We'll be finishing for the day around 5:30. So please stay to the end of the talk. You need to enjoy everything. Tomorrow we're going to start at 8:30 in the morning, also with coffee. And we have 2 talks in the morning, so we have a lot to do and see. So please be on time so we won't be running late. Tomorrow we also have lunch will be included on the event. So please everyone confirm that you will be here for lunch so that we can give you guys very good finishing touch on our event. There will also be a little surprise and more information about our extension course, okay? So now I'd like to invite teacher Chris. She's a pedagogical supervisor, coordinator, something like that, at a bilingual school in São Paulo, and she has also a lot of experience to share with us today. Please, teacher Chris.
So, hi everybody, thank you for coming, thank you for being here, and thank you for those who can stick around until the end. I know it's been a long day and you're probably very tired. I'll try to keep you entertained, okay? As Susan started telling a little bit about her story, I'm going to tell you a very short story about my childhood. When I was a child, I lived in the outskirts of São Paulo, in a place that was not very populated. There was a huge piece of land in front of my house, and eventually somebody came and built a lot of germinated houses over there, and obviously many people moved in, which was wonderful, and had children on the street, which I didn't have before. But who had the courage to start playing? At those days it was a very, very long ago, okay people, this is a conversation I had with Hugo yesterday about age, right? I look around and I see people from different ages, but I mean, that was a long time ago. We had a toy called Velotrol, okay? Which was a bit of a tricycle made of plastic, very cheap plastic, would break no time at all. And one of the girls who moved into one of these houses also had a Velotrol, and I was really, really willing to play with her, but didn't know what to do. And I finally took the courage, wrote a little message. I must have been 8 at the time or something like that. I wrote a little message, do you want to play with me? And then I put the message on her door, rang the bell, and ran and hid inside my house and kept looking to see if she was going to see it. And eventually she wrote yes and put it back into my house. So we became great friends, and from then on we just started playing. This is the reason I'm telling this story is that play is a powerful thing. And when you are at play, it takes a lot of courage. And sometimes we go around saying that playing is silly, that playing is just for little children, and we do not realize that playing takes a lot of courage. And sometimes we're just not ready for that. So today, I'm putting a little message into you and saying, would you play with me today, please? Okay? And that is, I'm saying this with the same courage that I had at that time, because obviously when you ask somebody something, the possibility of getting a no is there. And when you put yourself, we've asked the question, I want to play with you, and you get a no, it is kind of hard, right? So, but that's okay. You can also say, you can always say no, but I just wanted to recognize the courage that is placed over here, and then I'm going to begin with a little game, okay? We're going to play a little game, and this little game over here, can you? I'm going to call it the multiliteracy game. I invented, okay? I invented in a format that is here. Obviously, I have some repertoire, and I am making a little change, and I am making this game mine now. It's not mine. I've seen it, many other versions of this game. You probably played it sometime, but today we're going to play it the way I've designed, okay? And it's called multidiversity, but it's a version of Senta Levanta, okay? You've played that before, right? And it's going to take not just courage from you, but also a little bit of physical exercise. I apologize for that, okay? It goes like this. We are very diverse people over here. We are all very different, very unique, but there are some things that we do together. I am showing you some photographs taken from a poster. They are awful photographs. You'll see plenty of those in my presentation. I don't know how to take photos. And these are photos of children together with people who live on the streets, the homeless people in São Paulo, and people who survive by gathering trash. And we played multidiversity, sort of, with these people by finding out what they had in common, okay? I'll tell you a little bit more about this activity, and this is what we're going to do now. We are going to, everybody will start sitting down, and I am going to tell you some things. If that thing applies to you, you're going to get up and look around and look at the people who have the same characteristic as you, okay? Can you do that? So we're going to start by, I'm going to start with the hard one for me. Get up if you like Roberto Carlos. Look around and acknowledge the people that, like you, like Roberto Carlos. Get up if you like samba. Look around. Yeah, well, if you don't like samba, sit down. Okay? If you don't like samba, sit down. If you like samba, look around of people who like samba. If you are married, stand up. I did this on purpose. I'm looking. I'm sorry. I just realized I shouldn't have done this. If you have children, now girls, okay, take a look around. If you have children, get up. If dancing is one of the things you like most in your life, stand up. If music is one of the things you like most in your life, get up. If you are an early bird, stand up. An early bird, a person who likes to get up early, full of energy. You know those people. You know them. There they are. And now, get up. If you love surprise parties. Surprise parties. And now, get up if you have taught anything other than English in your life. Something else other than English. You see that teachers are something else, right? We're never satisfied with one thing, right? We always want to go for something else. Thank you very much. Give yourselves a round of applause. We could go on forever, but that just shows that we are super diverse. And even those people that we think we hate, we might have things in common with them. Isn't that terrifying? It's terrifying. Anyway, so I wanted to begin with this a little bit to relax, and I will try to do a few games throughout the presentation so you don't fall asleep, okay? Because I know it's been a long day. I have some objectives here today, and I'm not sure if I'm going to go through all of them, and I am sure I'm not going to go through all of them in the right order, okay? Even though I have slides to organize my speech. I want to share with you my views, my understanding, my concerns about education, especially bilingual education. So as Susan had already pointed, I'm more concerned about education than bilingual education. Bilingual education is under the umbrella of education, right? I'm going to propose possible paths to organize materials when you're working with in bilingual education classrooms. These are paths. I recognize these as possibilities. I am not here to talk to you, this is the right thing to do, this is the best thing for you to do, okay? You're not going to hear that from me. Here, I am going to talk about a lot of the things that I do. I'm going to talk about my experience, and I will not talk about some of the very nice material that's probably available for you, okay? Because I tend to prepare my own materials. So if you came here, you looked at I just realized that. I looked at the title of the presentation and I looked at all the stands outside and I'm like, oh, maybe they're thinking they're going to talk about one of the things that have already been published. And I will not talk about that today, okay? I will try to give examples of sequences of activities in order to illustrate what I'm talking about. Because sometimes we talk about how we do things, and when we give the examples, oh, is that what you were thinking? This is what you're talking about? So I want to give examples as well. I want to discuss the purpose of using some kind of materials and not others. And I want to reflect a little bit on assessment, very little, and if we have time, and how assessment reviews the contradictions in our society, okay? I want to begin with a quote from a text that I was reading from, that Rita suggested in the course that I'm taking, and I was reading this, and one of the things that it talks about is one of the benefits of being bilingual, okay? So one of the benefits, bilingualism will enhance metalinguistic abilities, including your sensibility to the details and structure of language, early word reference distinction, recognitions of, in other words, when you know another language, you tend to compare and make distinctions, and that teach you things, not just about one language or the other, but about language in general and how it works. It teaches you things about grammar, for example. If you are bilingual, you're probably not going to get into a classroom and the teacher is going to explain to you how the present perfect works, and when the teacher turns to you and say, do you understand what I'm saying? You say, yeah, I just didn't get that part. You said verb. What's exactly verb? You know that thing? So you are probably more aware of that on a regular basis, because it's possible, and I've learned that from being 20 years in a English as a foreign language classroom. I've learned that you can be very successful, you can be very powerful and rich, and not know what a verb is. Okay, so we have been encouraging a lot of people to know what a verb is, and it seems that it's not that useful to them. Okay, but it's important that we recognize that this is true. And it gives us a little thought about how we learn. And one of the things that makes us learn more is by comparing and contrasting. We do that all the time. We categorize things. We say this is it, and this is not it. And this is a very important point that I want to make, because sometimes we tend to offer things that are, and a lot of things that are what we want them to do, what we want them to understand. We want them to learn verbs, We give them a lot of verbs, and we don't give them not verbs, for example, for them to compare. Because sometimes we can only understand what something is when we realize something that is not that thing, okay? So working with different things is also important. Being bilingual allows you to engage in different activities. And therefore, some people say being bilingual gives you mobility. I would say being bilingual gives you the possibility of mobility. Okay? You move if you want. You move by choice. Okay? What bilingualism does not give to you is that it does not make you a better human being. Therefore, you will find people who speak 2, 3, 4 languages and are bored. Okay? They speak many languages and they are real bigots, you know? They speak many languages, they sound native when they speak. And they are, let's say, they're bad human beings, okay? They're people we would rather not be around, okay? So, the idea of bilingualism, for me, is not a name. It's not a name in the meaning of, this is what I want my student to be. I want my student to sound native or to be extremely good. The first thing for me is I want my student to be a better person, okay? My students to be better people. That's why I am now in education. I am not in the language teaching business, okay? Education for me is most important. I brought to you a quote from Theodore Adorno when he says that the demand that Auschwitz does not repeat itself is the first of all for education, because in our classrooms we have to make sure that our students are knowledgeable, critical, humans, okay, and they can interact collaboratively so that they learn that there are different cultures, there are different people, that we are all extremely diverse. And that doesn't give me the reason to hate anybody. That doesn't give me the reason to discriminate anybody, okay? So I think this is the main point. And from there, I would say still, when you have that in mind, still you have too many paths to take. You have too many choices to make. And I would like to give you a better guide, but all I could come up with is that you have to bear in mind 2 very important things. The first one is a little bit of pragmatism, okay, which I shouldn't. It's not something that I usually like, but in life you have to live your surroundings, you have to live your reality. We are all over here, we work in different contexts, different schools, we have different people, we have bosses, we have people bigger than us, we have the students' parents, we have the students' problems, we have students' limitations, we have our limitations, we have real life, okay? We have life as it is. So when I am working, I have to consider the real conditions I have to work, the real people I work with, their possibilities and their limitations, the real environment I work with, the possibilities and limitations, okay? And I have to consider the world I live, the community and everything else. But I also have to bear in mind that I have something I want to get to. So utopia is a second thing I have to bear in mind. Reality and utopia. Where is it I want to get? So that allows me to trace a path. I want to live in a world that is a peaceful world, that people respect their differences, they collaborate. I want people to be autonomous, which means thinking, acting with agency, okay? Agency meaning I act collaboratively, I act not alone with other people, so I'm not a protagonist, meaning I am better than other people. I act, but I don't act to be better than the others. I act together with others to create a better world. So this is what I aim and this is what I have. So having that in mind, what is the best, now I'm using the best, but it's the best possible way to trace a path, okay? So this is what I bear in mind. This would be a formula I'm giving to you. I know it's useless, I know, but at least it's something to have in mind. What are my choices? And again, I'm making choices based on reality, okay? Because in our society, in order to eat, live, and everything else, you must have a job, okay? So I have a job. Actually, I have two. But I look for places. If I want to work, I try as hard as I can to find a place where students are seen as a whole human being, and everything is, and we care about that. So that's what I'm calling educação integral. It's not educação em tempo integral. That doesn't have to be, don't have to be the whole day at school, but you have to think that your student is a human being, a person, and in this human being, things are all connected. They are not seen separately. No, I'm the English teacher. I'm responsible to teach, I'm responsible for teaching only these contents, only English. If he's got a problem, solve it outside or call the coordinator or something else. That has nothing to do with the problems in our society. Because the world is falling apart, yeah, but today is the present perfect. Sorry, I have something else to teach. So the idea of this holistic education, some people call it doesn't have to be with chronotherapy, okay? It's not something like that. It's just that you imagine the human being as a human being, treat him as a human being, right? I'd rather work with bilingual education than to work with English as a foreign language. For me, these are very distinct things. And I've worked as an English as a foreign language for 20 years, and I wouldn't like to go back to that. I have moved away from that, and I would prefer to stay in bilingual education, because I do think that in bilingual education you can aim at raising and trying to build a better world with better people. Okay, I believe this is a way of doing it. I'd rather work in places in which the subjects are not very limited. I teach science, you teach English, you teach math. I don't really like that. It was very hard for me when I started in bilingual education, having worked for a long time as an English as a foreign language teacher, starting with in a school in which I had to teach math, science, social studies. I had to think about guidance and everything else. It was extremely hard for me. It gave me a lot of work. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. I had very little support in organizing activities and curriculum for that environment. So it was extremely hard. But having lived that hard path, I don't want to go back. Okay, I see now that working with the subjects in an integrated way is a way of understanding real life a lot better and transforming real life in a much better way. It gives you more instruments to change society. I also want to work in environments in which the teacher can be an author or a co-author. I don't want to work as a person who delivers something that has been prepared, totally prepared for me. I'm not saying in any way that we shouldn't use any materials, or we shouldn't buy any didactic materials or anything else. I'm not saying this, but what I don't want to be is a little bit of a puppet, just delivering something that is ready, totally ready for me. I want to have a go in saying how I'm going to transform this activity, how I'm going to give it a way that it reflects a little bit more of what I think and what my students think. I also want to work in a place where the students is saying it as somebody who has voice, and as in a place in where we understand as Susan was showing the graph from Ronda Bondi, when you have a class in which the teacher just speaks, students' autonomy is not dealt with, and his engagement is also not dealt with. It doesn't mean that we cannot never have a class like this, But if we only have this kind of class, I'm not aiming at what I would like them to be. And how do I know if they are producing anything? How do I know if they're not sleeping? How do I know if they are not making the wrong connections in their hands? I don't know. So students must somehow produce things in order to create. I don't know. I would like to work in an environment like this, if possible. Okay? Sometimes it isn't. Some people have a problem with Paulo Freire. If you do, I am sorry. Okay? I don't. He says something that for me is very important, and this is exactly what I try to do. And it's very hard. Like I have a name, Norte, right? That Susan has to say. This is what I want. And what is it that I do that is leading to that? So to be coherent with my ideals and my practices is what I want. Okay? So when I design materials, I think about coherence. How are these materials that I'm preparing going to be coherent with what I think about the world I want to live in within the conditions that are given to me? This is what I have in mind all the time. Okay? This is Paulo Freire's work all the time. And in the real world, as I was telling you, and you probably know better than I do, is that we have a lot of things to follow. The first documents, somebody once said, it's like a waterfall of power, you know? Like you have the official documents, the state documents, your school's project, your coordinator. There's too many people above you. At least above me, I don't know, no, maybe not above you, above me. There are so many people that I have to look up and say what they're telling me to do when I am preparing materials. And I have to do that. This is real life. Okay, so one of the documents that is being produced right now is the Base Nacional Comum Curricular. And I would say that it's becoming a better document, right? The fourth version was launched in December, and it was better than the third, okay? And at least for English. And one of the things that it says is that once the number of non-native speakers has outnumbered the number of native speakers of English, understand that? So there are more people speaking English in the world that are not native speakers than native speakers. Why is it that we have to follow the native model? Okay, if this is not even in terms of quantity of people, it's not even what we are using English for. I recall a few years ago I went to, we were doing a research together on digital image. It was the same project that, actually when the project began, we were doing this project with many countries around the world, Greece, Russia, England, India, don't remember anymore, all of these people. When we got together in Greece, it was wonderful, okay? We got together in Greece for a meeting to say, everybody was sharing what they were doing in their own countries about the use of digital media by young learners. And then we were there, and English obviously was the code we were using to communicate, and I realized they couldn't care less if they spoke, she have a pen. She have iPad, whatever. Nobody cared, okay? Nobody cared. So we care so much in our English classes. We don't pay attention to what it is that she has. It doesn't matter. What matters is that she has, you know, that she have, okay? I get very upset with that. Never mind what she has, okay? So, and I became to think that this is, maybe because they're European, I don't know. Some of them were European, they couldn't care less what the mistakes they were making. And the whole idea was for us to get the message across. And it really didn't matter if you made mistakes or if you didn't use the word, or if sometimes you say, oh, how do you say that word in da-da-da, or you said that word yesterday, or that was no problem, okay? And this, for the same reason, or that there are more non-native speakers than native speakers in the world, is that people are calling, sorry, I disorganized the sentence completely, but we have been hearing about English as an international language, as a global language, as an additive language, and so on, and this is the same reason. And in the Base Nacional Curricular Comum, they are saying Língua Franca, okay? They made a choice of Língua Franca, and I said, why is it different from the others? And I wasn't satisfied with what was written there, so I went out and I looked up the etymology of the word, and it says Franca, it means free, non-slaved. And I thought that was wonderful, actually, because this is what I think about English sometimes, is that when we learn a language, you don't learn the language by itself. It comes with a whole package, right? And in our English classes, we have been teaching people how good it is to be a native speaker of English, right? Because they speak the English is so nice, and the places they go to is so nice, and it's beautiful, and you show images of these places, and you notice how organized people are, how funny they are, and so on. So you sell the whole package, English and the native speaker together. First, I think there is so what I would like to say is that I thought that the term was really good for me, because it gave me the reason that by using this, I'm moving away from this pattern. It does not mean that this doesn't happen still today. We were listening to Susan say about the English being a privileged language, or being noticed as something that is a bit elitist, okay? Knowing English has more value than knowing Portuguese, for example. And it's not just because English is spoken all over the world, but it's got a status that is different from other languages. And this is still valid today. But when I assume English as língua franca, I make a stance. This is what I want. That's why I'm calling this utopia. This is the utopia in my work, okay? This is I want English for everybody, okay? As a result, I can say that teaching English as língua franca is not the same way. It's not the same thing as teaching English as a foreign language. If you, and maybe I'm talking about myself, you don't have to see yourself in there, but this is how I saw myself in the many years I taught English as a foreign language. I saw that we had a model, a role model, and the role model was the native speaker. And we wanted to sound native, okay? When somebody said to me, wow, you sound American, you smiled, right? And with somebody, and we wanted to be, and it's so frustrating because really, you're not gonna be born again. You were never gonna be as a native speaker if you're not, right? I'm not gonna be born again, and I'm not gonna be a native speaker. This is impossible. Also, the model that we had, when you start going around and say, really? Yeah, he's making the mistake. Native speakers speaking she have, they exist, okay? So there are all kinds of native speakers, and probably none of them are the guy that you want to be, or the one that you're modeling yourself upon, okay? So, this is one of the problems. I told you about the super value we give to a culture, and it's a culture that oppresses us in a way, okay? We live in an imperialistic world, okay? Where some value more than the others, and we're teaching a language with this kind of characteristic. This is also problematic. Also, when we teach, usually we use methods in language schools. I don't know, again, I'm talking about my experience. We use methods in language schools that come in this format: step 1, step 2, step 3. You go into the classroom and you deliver whatever it is that you're supposed to deliver. And these methods, they have been created by who? By the native speaker. That guy who didn't have to learn a second language because his language was privileged. This language was the one his language is the one that is valued for everybody, by everybody. So, at least, I don't know if it might be good, it might be bad, I don't know. But we should question that. Is he the guy who has to tell me what I have to say, what I have to do inside of the classroom, okay? And again, this has an intention in my point of view. Some people think, no, I'm just teaching English. I never believe we're just teaching something. There's always an ideology behind it. And if you do not know what it is, that's even more problematic, okay? Because we should be aware of the consequences of the things that we are teaching and the way we are teaching, okay? So, teaching English as a lingua franca could be, I don't know, it could be teaching English as a semiotic good for everybody, or it's the way it's written in the base, bem simbólico para falantes do mundo todo. This is utopia, okay? But this is what we bear in mind. And, can I switch? To enhance the possibilities of understanding your own reality, because then I'm comparing to something else. Remember I told you about comparing in the beginning? If I get to know another way, I start questioning my own way of doing things. Does it not mean that I have, that's why, was it you or Carlos, I don't remember anymore, who was talking about, you were talking about interculturality rather than multiculturality, because when you learn about something else, you might start making connections and start questioning yourself about things, okay? So by learning something else, a different culture, a different language and everything else, another way of acting in the world, I might start questioning my own ways, right? And you're going to feel very bothered, maybe, I don't know, here, that the base is also telling us that if non-native speakers are using English to communicate, the Russian guy is talking to the Greek guy in English, and they are getting their message through, and they are doing business, or they are sharing their knowledge, something that they have researched and everything else. Why is it that I have to go there? No, but she has, okay? What does that have to do with anything, okay? She have, fine, okay? They've done their work, so this becomes legitimate, okay? And the models that we have are just for I'm not saying again, this is, we shouldn't go for it, but is this the main thing? Because in my classes, it used to be the main thing. Who never in life on a Monday got to the English classroom and said, what did you do on the weekend? And then people, and you, and you, and you, and you, and then you didn't even heard, didn't hear what the students were saying. You said, you? Yeah, you went to the movies. Yeah, you? Yeah. Went, go repeat, went, okay? And then, I went to my father's funeral. Very good. It doesn't matter what the student is saying. We're not paying attention anymore. It gets to a point where you're only tracking their grammar, okay? So I am just talking about, I'm not saying it's you. I'm talking, it's me. That was me, okay? And maybe it still is, but I'm trying to move away from it, okay? And so and it's also about observing and analyzing reality. Then if I have another way, I have other categories to base my reflections on. And I want to ask a question now, because I've spoken a lot already. I want to ask a question. What is bothering you so far? And I hope I have bothered you a little bit. And in order to check, I can't ask each one of you, but I would like all of you to talk about what's bothering, what's concerning you, and what's not clear, or what this talk made you think. And I would like to hear all of you. So, and I can't, obviously, but I'm going to ask you to play another game, which is called Back to Back. Back to Back is a game I learned from Carrie Loveman. Carrie was here a few years ago when we had an event here in Fortaleza. And she has a book called Unscripted Learning, learning that has not been written. It's up to you, okay? And she talks about play. And in this play activity, is something that she got from theater. Can you do it with me? We start. You're perfect with me because you don't challenge me vertically. So here we are, back to back, and we are going to have a conversation. It goes like this. One of us is going to be me. It doesn't have to be me, okay? It's a presenter, okay? Somebody who's talking about teaching English as a second language, as a foreign language, or lingua franca. Somebody who's been saying a lot of things to you right now. And the other person is part of the audience, and the person is bothered or has some thoughts about it. And then I'm going to say, go. And we are going to turn to each other, and we're going to start talking. But we are not going to agree on who's going to be who before we turn. Okay? I'm going to give you another example. Another example, just as to illustrate. We are here playing back to back. We have dogs, okay? One has a small dog, the other one has a big dog. And one of the dogs went to the other person's lawn and pooped on it, okay? That's how we're going to do this conversation. Do you understand? Go. Ay, come on, you're just complaining about that little piece of poo in your land. What's the problem? Like, come on, it's good for the land, it fertilizes it. I know, I think you're overreacting on this, okay? And then we go on until the activity ends. She wants to go on talking about, I know, I don't care. So the idea with this is that you start talking, but you don't know who is who until you actually turn, okay? So one of you is going to be a presenter talking about all those things, the base, lingua franca, English as a foreign language, the English classroom. The other one is a person in the audience. It's been triggered by some of the thoughts. When you turn around, you're going to be one of them, and you're going to start a conversation. You might be mad. You might just want to ask a question about something. You might just want to understand better something that was said, okay? You might just say that you're tired of doing this and you're mad because people left you as the last presenter in the day, okay? I don't know. You're going to say something, okay? Something like that. Can we play? Can we play? For that activity, you're going to have to find somebody to work with you, and you have to get up. Sorry. Do you all have a pair? Back to back with somebody. Have you found somebody a pair? Does anybody need a pair? Does everybody have a pair? Let me see. Are you all right there? You gonna play or not? Are you playing? Are you playing? Are you playing? Are you with you? Are you ready? Are you ready? Go. Go. Okay. Can you get back to your places, please? Thank you. Thank you for your availability and your courage. Can we use back-to-back in the classroom? Yes. Okay. For many things, even for contents, we can use back-to-back in the classroom for contents. You're going to turn around and one person's going to ask questions, a lot of doubts about this topic we're learning in science, and the other one is the guy who knows it all, okay? And then you turn around and you start your conversation. Just a suggestion. You can do it with many things. It improves fluency, for example, okay? And it also develops content because you get to evaluate what you know about the country, the contents, what you don't know. There are many uses for that. But obviously that was not my purpose. My purpose was to find out what's triggering you so far. And I would like to ask them, could you solve that problem? Or do you have a question now? Do you have something to ask, something to comment so far? And then I can give you a microphone if you do. Comments, questions, problems?
In fact, I was you. I was the presenter. And my partner, she told me that she is a grammar freak. And I said I was moving away from that. I'm moving away. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am. We are. It's not an easy move. So when you say that, it reminds me of communicative approach when it started. When I started teaching some decades ago. I remember that. And you do you? Yeah, because I am you. And I remember because when the communicative approach started, we had lots of students. Grammar was vanished from all the books, the textbooks, and we did not teach any grammar. And we had lots of students communicating, but with a lot of grammar mistakes, structure mistakes. And then it seemed like it's coming back. The grammar is coming back to the textbooks again, but in a context. So can I be moving away totally from grammar or not?
Can she move away from, totally move away from grammar? Can we totally move away from grammar? Grammar is part of language, right? If you say something that is intelligible, it's because some grammar is there, right? Some grammar is there. But maybe we get to pay attention to something else, right? Maybe we listen until the end and we tell them, yeah, I like what you said, and next time maybe she has, okay? That could be another possibility, okay? Listen to it, respond to it, acknowledge what the person said. This is more important. And the next time you say, let's try to make it with she has, okay? That would be more grammatically correct, okay? And it doesn't mean it's just that it doesn't mean that the person is going to be bad because she didn't say she has, for example, right? Okay. Anybody else? So we're going to move on to what brought us here, which is materials that connect the classroom to the world, right? And I'm going to start with what is not, okay? It makes it easier for me sometimes when I'm defining things. I decide what's not first. I clear up what's not, and then I decide what it is. It's not handling a bunch of activities. You finished? Now you this one. You finished? Now you this one. Now you that one now. So if you have a bunch of handouts that you're ordering and just giving one after the other, you're not connecting the world to the classroom, okay? If you are asking your students what they did on the weekend, just because you want to check if they have grasped the present, the past perfect, the simple past, for example, you're not connecting the classroom to the world, okay? for us to connect the classroom to the world, we have to have a clear idea of where we want to go, as Susan was telling us before. It has to be clear. This is what I want. These are my objectives. And then I trace a path. And I am departing from this, and it's based on something that we call activity theory. Activity theory was first mentioned as a theory by Leontiev, who used to work with Vygotsky. They were all on that trace before. The idea of activity theory, it recognizes, as Marx had told before, that men, human beings, they move toward an objective. You have a need, you have something you want to achieve, something you want to grab, something you want to have, and that's how you move. And you do not move if you don't have an idea of what it is that you want, okay? And when we teach grammar just for the sake of teaching grammar, it's not, the student doesn't need that, doesn't look forward to that, does not desire that. So if he's moving towards that, it's because he's got a second objective. You don't know about that. If you don't know what it is, okay? It's either because his mom is going to do something, or is going to punish him, or he was promised something else. We're disconnecting him to the real purpose. We move towards an objective, and it should be, and this is not bad, this is actually good, okay? So when I move towards an objective, I trace a path. This is where I want to get. It doesn't mean that my path is good, my path is the right one, is the best one. It doesn't mean any of that. But it means that I am making an effort to trace something that is, in my mind, logical and coherent. And in my mind, it gets me there. This path is limited to my skills, to what is available to me at the time, to what the others, what the cooperation that I'm going to get from other people along the way, okay? But this is how I'm going to do it. So it allows me to comprehend the world, whatever path that I trace, allows me to comprehend, to live, to analyze, and to transform things that are about real life, okay? So what's the topic of my class? It's something in real life, as the example that Susan had given the talk before, when we wanted to talk about, we want to discuss, argue something, what was happening. Carnaval on Praça Roosevelt. We depart from that. Live the situation. Now, how did you live the situation as a police officer, as a person who lives on Praça Roosevelt, as a person who was trying just to have fun doing Carnival? Okay? So how did you live the situation? Analyze from different points of view the situation. Look for the law. What does the law say? Do you agree with the law? Okay? What are the benefits of this law? So then, that's how we organize. If we were organizing the classroom in a foreign language classroom, we would sometimes work with grammatical structure, because everybody here knows that we start with the verb to be. And then we talk about the simple present, and then we talk about simple past and future and so on. This is the logical of life. And when Carlos was speaking, he said, is it? Did we learn L1 that way? Did our mother say, okay, month one, we're just going to speak with the verb to be, and then she moved on when we were 2 months, 3 months, 6, I don't know. This logic that we traced, and we think it's unchangeable. I remember when I started, we used to use a book called In Touch. If you know it, I thought nobody was going to say yes. We used a book called In Touch. And book 2, it was horrible. I actually liked that book. But it had a horrible problem. I don't know if you remember. Book 2, Unit 1. You know what they taught? How long have you been here? But for past tense, which was in Unit 3, we were like mad. How can anybody teach present perfect before simple past? This is unnatural, right? Nobody would say such a thing. So we start having this, we don't question this kind of thing. Why is it that there is this order? Should I always talk about what I do now, or maybe I should start talking about what I did? I don't know. Is there a logic for that? Not sure. We had units organized under vocabulary at the zoo, and then we talked about those words, okay? We had a time in which we talked about functions. In Touch talked a lot about functions connected with grammar, right? Now ask your friend to go out. Would you like to go out with me? Okay? We talked about typology, okay, or kinds of texts, all descriptive. Learn about descriptions, describe, moved, got it? Now, narratives, talk about tell a story, and so on. And we moved to different types of texts. We also had strategies. That was the worst for me. I had a problem with this. I had a partner who was really into strategies for some times, and she got the students to raise hypotheses, which is a strategy, okay? And then we stayed for a long time raising hypotheses, and then I said, can we move on to something else? And she said, no, my students haven't learned how to raise hypotheses. Can we please talk about something else? It was nonsensic, because they were not learning about raising hypotheses, because it didn't make any sense to them, because you raise hypotheses on something that you would like to know, a specific topic, okay? And not just raising hypotheses for the sake of raising hypotheses, right? We also have themes, school, I don't know, or living abroad is a theme of the unit, and then we talk about that. And we separated contents into listening, into skills, right? Listening, speaking, reading, and writing. All fine. I am not saying, this is horrible. I'm saying we've done this, and we've done this in a very separate, excluded way. I'm not saying forget all of it about this. This doesn't help. This doesn't help. This is history. We were talking yesterday about exploratory practice, which is something that tells us forget about what you know. Just let's look at it the way it is now, and forget about what you've learned. I'm against it. Okay. I think we've done all of this. We learn things from it. Okay. This has made us resourceful. Okay. But let's use it in a way that it makes more sense. Okay. What does the Base Nacional says to us? It divides into things it divides, and it's dividing is problematic, okay? People, you divide, you categorize it. But then after dividing, it tells us, put it all together, okay? So they divided into orality, which comprehends listening, speaking, and interacting orally. They got this from Portuguese, because I think people who were learning they were talking about Língua Portuguesa, they advanced in this conversation a lot more, and then this became part of this, their content. Reading, writing, grammar, or, not grammar, linguistic knowledge, vocabulary, grammar, word formation, whatever, everything else, and the intercultural dimension. And then they say, after separating everything, they say, none of these things should be more valued over another, okay? They should all be valued the same way. And especially, and this is a recommendation that they do it because they know us. They are us, actually. People who did it, they are us. They know that we have been doing for many, many years, organizing our curriculum into grammatical structures. So they say to us, none of them is more important than the other, especially the one that talks about grammatical structures, because they know we are going to go for that. Okay, so they're just letting a hint for us. So, if that's what we're going to do, we're going to organize a sequence of activities. They are going to explore different skills and everything. They're going to deal with reading, writing, listening, speaking, interacting with other people. They're going to talk about interculturality. How do I organize something that is at the same time coherent with my objectives? It's at the same time feasible. I have the tools and the expertise and the possibilities of doing this. And it's at the same time, there's a cohesion to it, okay? There are many proposals. I'm going to talk about a few of them today. I took out organizing into grammatical structures, that is out of question. Also, animals in the zoo is going to be out of the question, okay? We're not going to do that anymore because we're going to try to do a step forward. One possibility would be working with social activities. Now, the idea of working with social activities is something that Fernanda Liberari started, she proposed in a book a few years ago, Atividades Sociais nas Aulas de Inglês. And the theoretical support for this proposal is activity theory, thinking that society is organized in a way in which, I'll talk about it in a second, but this is what it's based on, activity theory. And one example would be taking part in a soiree being sarau, okay? So one activity could be that. I'll give you this example later on. So, or going to the movies, or instead of animals in the zoo, going to the zoo. Okay, that would be an activity. Also, you could organize your contents and all your paths through an objective. We're going to the zoo. Okay, and I think here in 7 de Setembro, people did something going to the museum, right? They have a social activity going to the museum. They organize the whole. The Museum of Ceará, going to the museum, okay? So organized that way, we did that some time ago. We can also problematize something, or you have a question that guides your thoughts throughout the unit, okay? For example, what we're using right now in year 7, building materials for year 7 in Instituto Ayrton Senna. O que as novas tecnologias trazem de possibilidades para as minhas práticas de linguagem? This is a topic that all the areas in language have, and will guide questions for each component of the area, and we're going to build our materials based on this. We can also put together something that we want as a product, okay? I want to have a presentation of a cultural fair, for example, and the cultural fair presentation is a product. Or as we had when we were building materials for the high school in Rio de Janeiro, we had a yearbook for the students in the 3rd year, the last year, so to put together a yearbook. And then to build that that product that was going to be a joint product, we had many people working on interviewing people who work at school, writing down this interview, selecting the information they're going to put there. So we had língua portuguesa, ICT, English, physical education, arts, taking photographs of the places around the school that they're going to use to put in their yearbook and so on. So it was a joint product that we had, and everything else was organized, all the contents were organized for us to reach that final product. Okay, you can have a theme, but a theme is not the zoo. A theme would be something that would trigger you to think about, for example, questions of gender in fashion. And we also had that we have to think about the age group, but we also had that in Rio de Janeiro as a possibility, okay? Again, a joint task among all the disciplines. We have a project. Now, working with projects, this can be seen as a very different way. I would say when you work in a project, you have to have methodology, okay? Methodology is your great preparation in advance. I always think that working with projects is something extremely difficult because planning has to be done as you go along. Okay? If you are really working, or if you're working with a project, for example, a personal project, you have to be a bit of a curator throughout the path. You talk to your student, or your students, or group of students. They have gone so far. You evaluate what's been done, and you trace new paths for them to follow. And you cannot have the final product designed in the beginning, okay? You don't know It's an open-end kind of activity, and some people say it's easy because they do whatever they want. No, it's not easy. It's very difficult because I have to follow their process, and I have to work as a curator. Sometimes I have to I have to go through materials and see which way they could follow. It's an open-end kind of thing. So if I'm working with personal projects like that, I know there are materials that are available now for you to work with products that deal with the methodology of a project, okay, and allow you to maybe take a more determined path, which could be a possibility, mainly for younger learners, right, who would then learn the methodology and later on will be able to work on their own projects on their own, right? There is a lot of people working with genre, right? Mainly in Portuguese. Time? Okay, and I have a million times, okay. So this is another possibility. You can take a look at dolls and chinuli. But the basic thing is that these things are not totally separated. For example, when I work with social activity, I have many actions to accomplish until I get to my aim, which is to participate in a soiree, for example. And during that task, I am going to have some actions, linguistic actions, which then were going to be realized by genders. Okay, so these are connected. They're not totally separated. You can make a mixture. Obviously, I can have guiding questions when I am doing a research, a project. I can have questions when I'm doing a theme or working on a theme. So they are not totally separated. Okay, what do I have to take into consideration? I have to first remember what world I want to live in, what student I want to form, what their age and interests are, their needs, the needs that are diagnosed in the context in school, in the community, the availability that I have. So again, what do I take into consideration? What I want and the real world, and then I go for the best viable possible way. I am giving you here, I'm tracing here a possible path. We are going to first share knowledge, previous knowledge, observe the contradictions in the previous knowledge, and then we are going to use materials from different sources. I think the example that Susan gave already tells you about this. We talk about a situation, we engage ourselves in a situation, we see what's problematic about this, let's solve this, we use what's available to learn more about that, we analyze it, we criticize it based on some criteria, make a synthesis of that, and then we produce something that is going to be an outcome, and it's going to tell other people what I have learned from that. And then you reflect and assess yourself based on some criteria. So I'm giving you an example of that. How can you work with that? One of the things is with social activity. As I was telling you, social activity is based on activity theory. I put an illustration over here that helps people usually understand what activity theory is. It tells us that people, or sujeito, they move towards an objective, an aim, okay, that they have. And to get to their aim, they use some sort of instruments. The ones that are available, the ones that they know how to use, and so on. But they are not loose in the world. These people, they participate, they're part of a community that is bigger than they are, and this community has rules for them to act upon, and the rules include who does what. There is certain labor division, okay? And I have something in mind, which does not mean at all that this is going to be the result that I'm going to have. So don't be frustrated if somewhere along the line you have to change the path and change your aims. But the idea is that you have something in mind, and then you produce a result or an outcome, right? So how, according to the steps I had traced for you before, I gave you an example of taking part in a soiree. So I'm giving to you over here one unit that I have created for year 5 at a bilingual school in São Paulo, okay? The Stand Stool is a school I work with. In year 5, they have, I think, similar structure that Sfera has. They have some subjects, they have subjects in Portuguese, subjects in English, okay? So teaching English, this is the language curriculum, taking part in a soiree. We begin with a performance. It works in São Paulo. I'm not sure if it will work over here. I remember being over here and asking people, can you say a poem or something? And then somebody coming and just doing it out of the blue, okay? Because people here are very outspoken here in Fortaleza. In São Paulo, they're not so much so. But maybe I tell students, who could come over here and say a poem or perform something? And then they come, they're shy, and then they do something that they know, or sometimes they don't. They sing a song. And then we start discussing, okay, if you were to prepare something to present to other people, not just to us over here, but to your family in a family union, or maybe to the whole class, or if you're going to go to present something in another classroom, was that enough, what you just did over here? No, I wouldn't do it, I'd be shy or so on. So what would you need to do? And when I do that, I ask them to think about to trace a possible outcome in their heads. Okay, I would have to choose a better poem, I would have to rehearse, memorize, I don't know, I would have to say it better and so on. So we trace a little path, or we talk about the needs that they would have to learn to get to that objective, okay? And then we started learning about different sources of things. In this first part, we're just discussing the content of production of a soiree, and then we show them a lot of things that tell them what a soiree is. I'm going to show you, I'm going to take a little break and show you a couple of materials that we use, but very, very short, just for you to have an idea. The first, nope, the first one, yeah. So this is one material that I show them to illustrate a soiree. I'm just showing bits and pieces. I will show them the whole thing, but we're just showing you bits and pieces for you to take a look at this material. Hold on. I'll show you another one that we use, another video that we use.
O amor é baixo, que passa e não se vê. Celular que vibra e não se sente. É o emoticon que aparece sorridente, eternamente deturno no Twitter.
It goes a little bit further, but this is one of the things that we do. Okay. And we also, when we're talking about the context of production, we also give them a piece of homework. Can you? Yeah. It's here. And then the next slide. We also give them a piece of homework that is, it's going to go. Next one. There is an article from Veja that was printed a few years ago, before that. Yeah, that one. So here's where, an article from Veja. These are students, they're 10-year-olds. We show them these two videos and give this piece of homework, okay? And I hope you have some thoughts about this in your head, because we're gonna play another game that I have learned with Carrie. And it's called Yes and. I'm gonna again do my version of this game. If she knows about this version, she's not gonna be happy, because the idea of yes and is that that you are going to accept the other as the other is. Okay, it's about accepting the other the way the person is. It's very good for telling stories. You know how to be a story. You say, I met a little girl on the way here, and then the other person's gonna say, yes, and she had a beautiful hair. And then the other person goes, yes, and you're supposed to continue these sentences. I'm going to say, because I don't want you to agree with everything, so we're going to play yes and or yes but. By doing this, we're changing, which means you have to pay attention to the person who spoke before you, okay? So, question is, would you use these materials in your English class? And then I'm going to have a very brave person to begin, and then others are going to add by agreeing, yes, and saying something else about the materials, or disagreeing with the last person that spoke, yeah, but saying something else. Is that clear? Yes? Do I have a brave person who would begin saying something about these materials? And you have to shout it out, because I don't think we can pass the microphone for this. You have to shout it out. Yes? Shout it out. Would you use these materials in your classroom?
Yes.
These materials, say something about the materials.
These materials are amazing to raise students' interest. That's it.
Yes and or yes but now. You have to shout it out. No?
Yes, and it would be fun, because it is a very interesting way to learn the language. Yes, and we would know students who show their ability.
No but?
Yes, but before you do decide to take on these materials, you have to see if it is feasible in your reality, or if it's just an utopia in your classroom.
Yes, but if you don't have a physical space, you can ask for coordination to have one.
What about the materials? I said, didn't feel bothered about the materials. Is okay? Yes, but some of them are in Portuguese.
Yeah, but it's connected with the report.
Okay? Is that okay? Okay, so we move on. The idea here is that we are trying to illustrate what a soiree is. A soiree, mainly when we started, was not common in São Paulo at all. It is here. I know that Fabio is promoting some kind of things over here in Fortaleza, but in São Paulo, a few years ago, it was not common. Today, it's becoming common to have soirees near the suburbs, in the suburbs of São Paulo, and they are very politically engaged. People are really doing very nice poetry and rap poetry and things like that. In the suburbs of São Paulo, some of the things are very high quality, okay? But when we started this, it didn't exist. Still, you had some places in São Paulo that carry this kind of activity. So we had to teach them and show them what it was. And this is content for us, showing where this activity takes place, how people organize themselves for this activity is a content that is just as important as the text itself. Okay, so working and learning about where it is produced, who produces it, what kind of work has to take place when you organize a soiree. All of these are contents just as valid as a poem that you may say it in the soiree. Okay, so that's why we do this. Okay, and then another part of it is to analyze what's happening over there. For example, compare what does a performer do? What does a person in the audience do? Okay, does everybody like everything? What can you do when you don't like things? Okay, would it be? We saw some soirees. Could you, if you're doing a soiree for students in year 1, for example, would you do the same thing that they did over there? What changes would take place according to the audience? And this, Vygotsky says, that is what becomes meaningful to people. Meaning comes not from the words, but to the context where these words are produced. Okay? Meaning does not come from the word itself. Meaning comes from the content. And we do not pay attention to that. So content is just as relevant and has to be placed in advance. Okay? That's why when we play back-to-back, for example, it's a discomfort because meaning takes place just after we turn. And my words only become meaningful after we've come to some sort of agreement of who's going to be who and what we're going to be like and who's mad and if you're not and so on. Okay? Another thing that we need to talk about is that we also need to produce things. We assess students by giving them a test and finding out if they know what I asked or I did not. But when you ask students to produce things, you know what they have learned, and they're not just delivering what you taught. They are delivering what they have made, the meaning that they produced after you taught them. Okay, so there is a digestion period that goes on, and when they deliver that, what you see, the outcome is the production, is the reaction between your teaching and their digestion. Okay, so what they produce is meaning for themselves. And if I don't have them, if I just give them a test, I don't really, depending on the test obviously, but most of the times I don't even know what they can do with that. What I taught them becomes an instrument for them to act in the world. That's why we talk about performance, okay? So we perform. We're going to organize a soiree for different groups here around the school. It's going to be for year 1 student. How are you going to organize? What is it that you have to do? Write an invitation, talk to the teacher, choose texts that are appropriate for that age group. Practice, practice, practice. Go there, be there on time. All of that is included in the performance, the preparation, and the time when they deliver. Okay? And because they're taking part in all of this, one of the things that you can do is afterwards reflect. Was it good? What was the matter? What happened? I got there and the teacher was not ready because I forgot to tell her, or because the student, they are able, or at the time I forgot my part, or I forgot to bring the prop that I was going to use at that time. When students are engaged in the planning of what was going on, they also have access to the criteria you're using to evaluate them. So they can do this reflection together with you. They can say, was it good? How would you improve it? Because sometimes it's good enough, but if you had to do it again, what would you change, for example? And they know, because they were there the whole process and they know what to talk about that. Okay? So in other words, what methodological choices will give support to this kind of approach? First, you have diverse materials. You have reading materials, you have videos, you have conversations, you have a lot of things, diversity in the classroom. If you think about diversity in the classroom, I don't have to think, now it's the Now it's I'm going to deal with reading. Now I'm going to deal with, obviously you're going to deal with reading, you're going to deal with watching a film and everything else. But if I have a diversity all the time, if I think about diversity all the time, I am sure that I'm giving students everything that they need, okay? Rather than counting, maybe. This has to be or I'm going to begin with this or do that. I'm going to do what makes sense, and I'm going to show them a diversity of things. So diversity of things, and they come from the real world, so they are not perfect, okay? The language that's spoken is not perfect. The movie sometimes is not, I can criticize, is it too low? Because sometimes I show soirees that other students had in other schools. And then I see that one student speaks loud, the other one doesn't, but I can't understand. Okay, what would the student have to do to be comprehended? He should have spoken louder, or he should have spoken closer to the microphone, I don't know. So they are able to see what's not good also, okay? We have a tendency to show them only what's good, and what's good doesn't give them sometimes criteria to analyze how to improve, okay? They have to see something that is also not good, okay? We use performance and play as forms of collaboratively interacting and experimenting culture. So we don't talk about culture. Look how people celebrate Thanksgiving. They do that. We do Thanksgiving if we're going to do that. We're going to live Thanksgiving. We're not going to talk about it, okay? We analyze real texts in the real world, comprehending where they were produced and the intentions of the people who produced them. Okay, and we see the students as an author. He was also implicating himself in the production of knowledge and in the evaluation. It does not mean that we don't use anything that is good, okay? Also we use things that are good. So for a soiree, for example, we can choose to work with some poems. Again, I'm talking about poetry as a gender, but inside the social activity, taking part in a soiree, okay? So students will read different kinds of books, with different poems, and they will analyze these poems. They'll select poems that they would like to perform in one kind of soiree or another, okay? So these are actions or practices that we have in language, and they appear in a certain sphere. I'm going to change, can I? I'm tired now. So, gêneros textuais. Como você posso, Susan? Support. Can I switch? We're talking about translation. Can I switch to Portuguese now? Então, gêneros como para ações ou práticas de linguagem, eles são inseridos numa esfera de circulação, cumprem um objetivo dentro de uma atividade. Então, é como se fosse um gênero, fosse uma ação dentro de uma atividade. E eles têm uma estrutura mais ou menos regular e interlocutores mais ou menos definidos. Então, se a gente pensar na poesia, por exemplo, como é que eu vou trabalhar? Vou trabalhar o contexto de produção da poesia. Quando é que eu... Agora você leva em português. O contexto de produção de uma poesia, onde é que ela aparece? Aparece em livros, aparece em saraus. A gente mostra vídeos de gente recitando poema num funeral, aparece no For Weddings and a Funeral, tem a cena do funeral que ele recita um poema. A gente vê num filme que parece um casamento. Em diversas oportunidades a poesia aparece. A gente analisa a estrutura composicional da poesia, né? A estrutura composicional do gênero. Então, a poesia é feita, pode ser de estrofes, de versos, tem rima, às vezes não tem, às vezes tem um esquema de rima. Esse esquema de rima, às vezes, ele pode pertencer a ele pode ser rígido e
o seu lírico, né?
O seu lírico.
O seu lírico.
Meu eu é o seu, né? Tá.
Nós alunos do Enem, que o Enem não pede o lírico, né?
Pede o meu lírico, é o seu lírico.
Aí eles dizem, eu não aguento mais o seu lírico.
O eu lírico tem, a gente trabalha com aspectos, então aí, e tipos de poesia, aí um haikai ou um limerick, que são poesias específicas, tipos de poesia específicas que a gente vai trabalhar com os alunos. E aí, língua portuguesa, por exemplo, vai trabalhar poesia também, mas aí trabalha com sonetos, que é uma poesia, um tipo de poesia que tem mais a ver com a língua portuguesa. E aí, os nossos saraus podem ser bilíngues, por exemplo, certo? E aí, eles fizeram diferentes coisas nas duas línguas. E não significa que a gente não vai chegar num momento em que a gente vai estudar aspectos linguísticos. Só que os aspectos linguísticos, eles estão organizados para favorecer a minha performance lá no sarau. Entendeu? Então, se tem rima, tem aluno que vai declamar e que ele come o final, justamente o final da estrofe, o final do verso. E aí você está falando, ó, você está percebendo? Está sumindo aqui no final. Você está sumindo com justamente aquilo que forma a rima. Não dá, favorece aí, né? Então tem uma entonação dessa rima. A percepção de que a poesia tem um esquema de rima, ela tem uma valoração na hora que eu apresento no sarau. Eu tenho que valorizar. Se tem um esquema de rima, esse esquema de rima tem que ficar claro na minha apresentação, né? Se eu não sei uma palavra, mas eu sei o esquema de rima, e a palavra está no final da história, eu sei como ela soa, porque ela vai acompanhar um determinado esquema, então eu sei como é que eu... o tipo de trabalho linguístico que a gente vai fazendo é esse. Trabalhar como a estrutura, a ortografia, por exemplo, dos finais das palavras. Como é que eu pronuncio palavras que rimam com play? Todas são terminadas em AY. Algumas são EY. Quantas são? Qual que é a maioria? Se eu tiver que fazer uma hipótese de uma palavra, então a gente trabalha bastante com isso também. O que me ajuda como aluno? Ao invés de memorizar todas as palavras sempre, eu posso criar hipóteses que são favoráveis para o meu desenvolvimento. Olha, as palavras que estão terminando com EI, né, elas soam como EI no final, normalmente são AY, a maior parte dela. Então eu passo a fazer uma hipótese mais próxima, estou trabalhando com crianças, né, uma hipótese mais próxima da realidade. Estudo de sufixos, por exemplo, formação de bancos de palavra, né? Se eu fazer uma poesia que tem num sarau que a gente quer falar sobre sustentabilidade, vai ser o nosso sarau. Então a gente vai produzir poesia sobre isso. Qual é um banco de palavras legal para a gente ter, que são ao mesmo tempo poéticas e que endereçam esse tópico? Então o vocabulário que a gente forma não é um tópico pré-dado, ele tem um sentido para mim. Faz sentido ter um banco de palavras que vai alimentar a minha produção de poema mais para frente para eu apresentar no sarau. Quer dizer, fica a ideia da coesão do trabalho, fica clara nesse sentido? São escolhas que a gente vai fazendo. Uma outra maneira que a gente tem se falado muito agora de organizar o currículo é a pedagogia dos multiletramentos. Não sei se a Susan já falou um pouquinho. A pedagogia dos multiletramentos, ela indica que a gente tem que ter, numa sequência lógica de conteúdos, 4 ações que são extremamente necessárias. A gente não pode pular nenhuma delas, elas não têm que ter necessariamente essa ordem, mas elas precisam estar presentes sempre. Partir de uma prática situada, por exemplo, tem que ter uma instrução evidente, quer dizer, a gente precisa ensinar alguma coisa, precisa ficar claro que você está ensinando alguma coisa, precisa ter um enquadramento crítico, no sentido de que eu preciso diferenciar pontos de vista, e eu acho que o exemplo que a Susan deu antes com o carnaval na Praça Roosevelt, ele é bem ilustrativo disso. É a prática situada, a gente vivendo o carnaval da Praça Roosevelt, com todos os atores que participaram daquilo. Depois, a gente lendo coisas, artigos de jornal que saíram com a opinião das pessoas diferentes que estavam ali, lendo leis de zoneamento, leis do PSIL que a gente tem lá em São Paulo, né, com o horário de fazer silêncio e tudo mais, discutindo isso e colocando, pensando no posicionamento de cada um ali naquela situação, para depois propor uma outra prática, como é que poderia ser então, como é que a gente podia tentar comemorar o carnaval aqui de um jeito que ficasse mais legal. Eu tinha um outro exemplo, mas eu não vou dar, tá? De práticas situadas. É que tinha uma com inglês aqui. Tô mal de tempo, gente? Eu preciso terminar? Acabou, é isso? Mais um exemplo ou não exemplo? Exemplo. Então, peraí, tá? A gente tem uma outra... Tem que sair, tá? Esse a escola onde eu trabalho, a Stand School, também participa desse projeto que a Susan mencionou antes, que é o DigitiMed, que é um projeto que está vinculado ao grupo LACE, de pesquisas em atividades no contexto escolar. E a escola, uma das coisas que a gente faz, a escola tem que apresentar uma unidade didática seguindo os princípios da pedagogia dos multiletramentos. Então, a gente fez uma proposta e apresentou lá. Nesse projeto, alunos, professores, gestores participam junto, e a gente fez uma proposta que começava com um flash mob, que era uma prática situada. A gente começava todo mundo junto, de repente falava: nossa, como você está linda hoje, querida, adorei o seu cabelo, nossa, e essas mechinhas que você fez, ficou muito legal, e ele liso assim, fica super bem em você, adorei, nossa, você está muito gata, emagreceu, né? Fazia um flash mob assim de elogios, todos ligados à beleza física, àquilo que era valorizado em termos de beleza feminina, etc. Sendo o cabelo liso, de preferência loiro, né, magrinha, alguma coisa assim. A gente ia fazendo esse tipo de elogio. Depois a gente passou um filme para eles, ainda numa prática situada, pensando nas questões de beleza. Não sei se vocês já viram esse filme. Esse é uma propaganda, na verdade, da Dove. Então, a nossa proposta foi, primeiro, depois dessa coisa dos elogios que a gente fez, a gente mostrou esse vídeo e deixou as pessoas discutirem um pouquinho entre elas, e aí fez umas propostas de trabalho, que a gente fez, então, um trabalho com a prática situada. Então, isso é o que acontece no mundo real. A gente se encontra e fala: ai, como você está bem, você emagreceu, seu cabelo. É uma prática comum nossa, né? Fazer elogios muito baseados nas características físicas e, de preferência, aquelas características que têm valor social, né? Que é ter um cabelo bem ajeitadinho, ser magrinha, tudo mais. E a gente começou a trabalhar com a instrução evidente e utilizar os conceitos e conteúdos que a gente tem na escola para falar sobre isso. Por exemplo, língua inglesa resolveu falar sobre o comparativo dos adjetivos, que aparece muito nas propagandas. E a gente deu um espelhinho para cada um, as pessoas se olhavam e falavam assim, e a gente fez a proposta, do questionamento: o que você precisaria melhorar em você para seguir melhor um padrão de beleza que existe aí, né? E a gente pôs vários adjetivos e eles tinham que colocar o ER para formar, ou just R, né? Para formar o comparativo do adjetivo. E eles falavam: I'd have to be taller, my hair would have to be straighter, my lips would have to be fuller, I don't know, né? Teriam que utilizar o comparativo dos adjetivos para falar de como eles poderiam se adequar melhor aos padrões de beleza. E depois a gente fazia um questionamento contrário, né? E o que você gostaria que as pessoas valorizassem mais em você e que não está colocado aí, que as pessoas não valorizam, por exemplo? O que você gosta em você, que não é um valor social, por exemplo? Em português, uma proposta de língua portuguesa foi analisar os anúncios publicitários e formar um slogan que fosse contra isso, né? Essa prática situada, instrução evidente, enquadramento crítico. A gente leu o texto sobre feminismo textos que falavam sobre o quanto a questão da mulher e a questão da beleza para a mulher. E a prática transformada, depois a gente fez uma outra atividade, que é um jogo que também aprendi com a Carrie, que é o... esqueci o nome agora. Curious Question. Não, a gente não jogou Curious Question, não. A gente fez um elogio, só que era um elogio baseado não na aparência, ou um elogio baseado numa admiração que você tinha por aquela pessoa. Então a gente saiu de novo e cada um tinha que fazer um elogio para uma outra pessoa, sem mencionar aspectos físicos. E também, sem mencionar estereótipos, e também a gente teve aí os slogans, né? Por que sofrer para sermos iguais se podemos ser diferentes? Eu acho que não dá para a gente falar de avaliação, mas acho que tudo bem, porque amanhã teremos uma fala sobre avaliação e a gente consegue falar um pouquinho melhor. Se eu fosse dizer que avaliação a gente usaria, eu diria que muito baseada numa performance, como eu tinha dito para vocês, né? A produção do aluno revelando aquilo que ele é capaz de produzir com base naquilo que ele aprendeu durante as aulas. É isso. Obrigada. Eu posso ficar um pouquinho mais se tiverem perguntas, comentários, alguma coisa, eu estou aqui. Alguém? To me.
Right, guys, it's your time now. Any questions? Anything to like to comment? The talk of Chris? No one? Okay.
I think that all those options that you gave, although I know that you usually opt for social activity, but I do believe that we can't have only one way of organizing our curriculum. But I do believe that all the ways we use should be based on social practices. I mean, not only analyzing how those practices work and developing the repertoire that is needed, the logic repertoire, everything we need to know in order to function in the world, but mainly, what is our role in social practices? What is our role in a practice like a soiree? But not why we are doing that? Not only because someone is telling us, but why would we do that, and why should we do that? I think that's the thing that we have to make our students, as Paulo Freire, in order for them to enter a process of conscientização. The concept of agency, I think it's very similar to the concept of conscientização. They have a lot of things to do, because it's not only knowing what happens in the world, but what can I do to change that, or my role in that. So I think education is to work the curriculum around those issues. That's my belief. I totally agree with you.
If I can also comment, during our break time, I have to agree with you, and I was talking to a few people, and I know that we all come from different backgrounds, and you have a certain context that will enable you to work in this way to a certain extent or not, right? And I do believe that this situated practice and social activity and multiliteracies, all of this can be adapted to the different realities. I think that in a language school, to a certain extent, you can do that. In a bilingual program, to a certain extent, you can do that. At a bilingual school, to a certain extent, you can also do that. So I think we really need to be critical and to have our goals in mind. What are we aiming at? And then we adjust our practice to whatever it is we're aiming at, and within the context that we have and what who our audience is, what people are ready for, because there's a moment for this construction. But I think it's a privilege for us to be here having this conversation about ideas and possibilities that are coming up at this moment of bilingual education that is certainly very different from 15 years ago. For example, when I first started in bilingual education, this was not the conversation that we used to have. So we used to have ready-made packages, and this is the bilingual program. So I think that if we can somehow connect to real life and bring meaning to our classes in whatever format you have, then there's a higher possibility of engagement and of creating agency so that kids and youths can really transform themselves and others in this direction.
All right, guys. Okay.
As we start tomorrow with my presentation, I'd like to ask you to think about one thing, okay? And don't say it now. You have to say tomorrow, okay? You have to come tomorrow with this homework, pre-work. You have to think about a word. It can be a word, it can be a symbol, it can be an object, it can be a verb. But one thing that you can say represents your identity. Okay? A word, an object that represents your identity, your personal identity. Não é RG, não, é sua identidade pessoal. Okay?
Alright, guys, with this task given us by Teacher Fabio, we'll be finishing for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I think it was a really, really good day.
Talk about the lunch.
Yes, lunch tomorrow. Please confirm with our hostesses that you'll be here at lunch. Please do. It's going to be a time to talk, to share our thoughts on everything. It's going to be in the restaurant of the hotel. It's a courtesy. It was not first at event, but we decided to add up to it. So please confirm with our hostesses that you'll be here for lunch, okay? Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Good night, and see you all tomorrow. And please don't be late 8:30 in the morning, okay? So that we can finish on time for lunch.